It is time to rank my favorite animation studio of all time. Hi everyone, it's me Gaming Do, and today it's time. It's time to talk about all 25 Pixar films and rank them from the worst to the best. Now, back in 2019, prior to the release of Toy Story 4, I did a tier list on the Pixar films. As I've grown up, my opinions might have changed a little bit. So, you'll see a little bit of a shift in some of the films, but I still think it's pretty similar, but it's not exactly the same anymore. Plus, we have films like Onward, Toy Story 4, Soul, and like Turning Red to rank now. So, I hope you guys like this list. Let's start off with number 25, which I think is a pretty obvious one. Who saw this one coming? Number 25, the worst Pixar film of all time, without hesitation, I have to say, is Cars 2. What other Pixar movie tried the least hardest compared to this film? I feel like this film didn't even freaking try to be good. It was just a pointless freaking cash grab that just wanted to sell toys, and they have the stupidest plot out of any Pixar film to date, with just basically Spy Mater. Oh yeah, Spy Mater is the greatest film of all time. Wait, no it's not. This film is... One word to describe this film is just stupid. And I can't believe the greatest animation studio of all time, in my opinion, made this piece of garbage. This, along with the bottom three, are the only Pixar films I actually kind of hate. But this one is without a doubt my least favorite. I know I said number 24 was my least favorite originally, but after rewatching that film, at least it has a couple of good scenes, but it's still not very good. Coming in at number 24 is Brave. Brave, I gotta admit, has a very good ending to it, and the animation and all the landscapes of Scotland are freaking beautiful. That's really all the positives I have for it. The protagonist is freaking insufferable. She's freaking self-centered and just, well, an itch with a bee, to say the least. Merida is not very likable. Oh my god. Ooh, her brothers are a lot worse. I hate her triplet brothers in this film. Oh, they piss me off. I like the father though. He was pretty funny. The mother was alright too in the film. But Brave is just not a film I enjoy coming back to every time I watch it, and it is one of Pixar's weaker films by far. This is a film where I feel like they actually tried but failed absolutely miserably. Coming in at number 23 is The Good Dinosaur. The Good Dinosaur, I see, has some effort of a good film put into it. It's too bad it's a bad film, though. And it's the best of Pixar's bad films, honestly, but it's still a pretty bad film. To start, none of the characters are likable. It's got a lot of cliches, such as the father being killed off. Feels way too similar to Mufasa's death from The Lion King. And, it's just, while the film is breathtaking, this is Pixar's most forgettable film to date. Sam Elliott's T-Rex was cool, I gotta admit that, but Good Dinosaur is by far and wide the most forgettable Pixar film of all time. And I've only seen it 3 times, which is the least amount behind Turning Red and LUCA that I've seen. I've seen Onward 3 times, so it's time. But anyways, The Good Dinosaur is not a film I enjoy coming back to, honestly. Okay, now we're on to the films I don't think are bad, but are not really what I'd consider good either. And the worst of them all is A Bug's Life. In my opinion, Bug's Life is Pixar's first, film that's not very good, and well, it's the second film released from the company, so maybe that's a little understandable, but at the same time, this is nothing special for me. I've never really had a great opinion on this film, and I saw this film when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and that was like 17, 18 years ago, so, yeah, this is nothing special in my opinion, and the main reason why is because outside of the main villain, none of the characters are really likable in this film. And the plot itself is alright, but it's nothing special. And it's just what I feel is the main thing with A Bug's Life. It's nothing special. It's not terrible or bad like the previous 3 films, but A Bug's Life is probably the most boring Pixar film out of them all. Sometimes it's hard to stay awake during this film. Cars 3. Initially, I really liked this film and thought this was the best Cars movie out of them all. Well, hate to say it, it's better than Cars 2 by far. As a matter of fact, I think it's better than both. Also, Good Dinosaur, Brave, and Bug's Life, but still, this one is a weak one for Pixar. It's still not a good movie. And the main reason why I don't think this film is a very good movie mainly has to do with the fact that the ending sucks. I hate the ending of this film, where basically Lightning McQueen accepts retirement, basically, and becomes the next Doc Hudson, even though he didn't even finish his final freaking race. That's horseshit, in my opinion. And honestly, I felt a bit bothered barely seeing the Radiator Springs gang in this film. They were there, but they weren't in the film nearly as much as even Cars 2. They were barely in this, and it was disappointing, but yeah, I can't necessarily say I'm a huge fan of Cars 3. It's not Pixar's worst film, but it's a weak one from them. Alright, this is the last Pixar film I don't like. 19 onward is films I actually like. And the last one, which I think is the best of the films I don't like, but I still don't like it nonetheless, is Finding Dory, coming in at number 20. In my opinion, Finding Dory is just way too similar to Finding Nemo. And it's stupid and honestly very forgettable. I don't remember a heck of a lot about this film, even though I've only seen it a couple of times. This might be the film I have the absolute least to say about it. Hank was cool, and the new characters were passable. Besides Hank, I really like Hank, but other than that, I feel like this feels a little too similar to the original Finding Nemo, and I wish they did a bit different with it. I wish there was a little more drama like there was in Finding Nemo. This feels kind of underdramatic. Also, the scene where Dory does find her parents in the film is very good and heartwarming, but outside of that, there's not a heck of a lot I like about this film. It's not a bad movie, but it's not really a good movie in my opinion. Oh, this is one of Pixar's best movies ever. I don't get it. You know what? This was on my number 2 spot for my ranking of the 2020 films originally, but going back to it, Soul is a good movie. It's a very good movie. But honestly, it can be boring at times. Like, I don't know. I feel like this is Pixar maybe being. What am I trying to say? This is the first film ever from Pixar and the only one to date where I'd say this film doesn't have a heck of a lot of appeal to kids. This really feels like an adult film. Not in that way. Don't no, not in that way. I mean, this is a film that's made for adults, I think, exclusively. Like, I don't see a lot. Maybe the cat, maybe. But Pixar is supposed to be for everyone. And I know a lot of people are talking about Turning Red being very specific for a target audience. And I can kind of agree with that to an extent. But honestly, this feels like the most geared towards a target audience Pixar film of all time, in my opinion. And that's just grown-ass adults. I don't know why I don't feel like this film has much appeal for kids, and Pixar isn't kids animation company. So, in that aspect, I think this is a really good film, but I just don't think it's a film for everyone. You know what? I like Cars more than most people do. Is it the best movie ever from Pixar? No. And honestly, that's due to this just being kind of a typical underdog story, a little bit, it feels like. But there are some legitimately great things about this movie, in my opinion. First of all, I'm a particular fan of the soundtrack. I don't know if this is just because this was the first Pixar movie I ever saw in the movie theater when I was, believe I was 5. But, I like the soundtrack. Actually, I love it. Real Gone, Life is a Highway, When You Find Yourself. Just a great soundtrack. The characters, for the most part, are likable. I know Lightning McQueen is bit of a prick in the beginning of the movie, but he grows. He grows as a car. Mater, as they grow older, gets a little more annoying, but he's still tolerable in this film, especially compared to the next Cars film. But, you know what? I think Cars is very underrated. It feels a little generic, which is the reason why I can't necessarily say it's Pixar's best, but you know what? I like this film more than most do, and I wouldn't put it towards the bottom of my list. It's a good movie. Incredibles 2 is one of Pixar's better sequels. I will full-heartedly admit it. As a matter of fact, it's actually my second favorite Pixar sequel that's not one of the Toy Story sequels. As a matter of fact, Incredibles 2 is a great movie. You want to know the biggest problem with the film? The villain kind of sucked. It's just, I've said it a lot, but she was a very generic villain, and like, why in the name of God and all that's holy did you go with your brother on trying to get supers legal if you just wanted them to be illegal? What is wrong with you? The screenslaver itself was really cool, and honestly, the scenes that I think would give most people headaches, I found pretty cool. I kind of like flashy colors and stuff like that, but, other than that, the screenslaver does bring the film down a fair bit, but other than that, I almost like this one as much as the original. It's just the fact that Syndrome pretty much made that film for me. Wow, the screenslaver sucked. I'm sorry, I'll go on to the other characters. Elastigirl is a great main protagonist. The scenes with Bob and the family are freaking hilarious. The action is great again, and what else can I say? It's another Incredibles movie. Nowhere near as good as the original because honestly, I like the story of the original better, and the villain is by far better in that film. But you know what? Incredibles 2 is still an enjoyable time. Now we get on to the Pixar films I think are truly great movies. Starting with Coco. Coco is a great movie. It's an emotional movie. Especially that ending, which is probably in my top 10 favorite Pixar scenes of all time when. Oh my god, it just. The way Miguel sings the Remember Me song to Coco, who's basically going through Alzheimer's right now, and that song makes her remember every. Oh, it's so heartwarming, and it's one of the maybe 5 or 6 Pixar scenes that made me get teary eyed. It's a beautiful scene. But The Land of the Dead is freaking breathtaking. It's one of Pixar's probably more serious films, but it has fun scenes, especially the dog. It was awesome. I just love every single dog on this planet, pretty much. I don't know. I'm a huge fan of dogs. I have 5, so. But anyways, my one complaint with this film is kind of very similar to Incredibles 2's biggest complaint. I didn't really like the villain that much. I felt like the twist where Hector was actually Miguel's grandfather was pretty good, but at the same time, why was it Ernesto? I don't know. I don't like the villain that much. I think he's very generic, but Coco, in my opinion, is a great film. It's actually probably the first great film on this list. I really like it. And my favorite Pixar sequel that's not a Toy Story sequel goes to Monsters University? Really? That's probably what most people are saying, but I actually think Monsters University is a pretty great prequel. You know what the biggest problem with the movie is, honestly? It's that most of the characters are kind of just bland. Most of Uzma Kappa just doesn't really appeal to me. I like Mike and Sully, and I found Don, honestly, to be pretty funny, but the rest of them are just nothing special, and the film is nowhere near as funny as the original Monsters, Inc. And it does have a lot of continuity errors to the first film, but you know what? Scratch that. Monsters University is a fun time. If anything, just seeing all of them go into the scare games is very entertaining. And the ending is great, where basically Mike is having a crisis that nobody thinks he's scary and stuff like that. And the scene by the lake, that's honestly a beautiful scene. But Monsters University's main positive is it might be one of Pixar's most fun films. It's just fun. That's my biggest positive with this film, and yeah, I love it. All right, here it is, the new kid on the block. Coming in at number 14, we have Turning Red. Turning Red, in my opinion, is actually a really good time. I may be exaggerated when I say I love this film, because I don't know if I quite love this film, but it was a lot better than I expected it was going to be. And a lot of people are saying this film is geared towards a very specific target audience, which might be my biggest complaint with the film, because in ways it kind of is. But at the same time, I really think most people could brush that off to realize that this is actually a film that's just a really good time to watch and is really fun. And honestly, most of the characters, they have flaws, but you can kind of see where they're coming from. Specifically with May's mother being overprotective of her, it's because she got into a fight with her own mother that basically ruined their relationship. And May just wants to be kind of independent and not be so dependent on her mother and father anymore. It's understandable. It's parts of growing up. Sure, there are references to like periods and stuff like that, but come on, if that's gonna bother you, then you kind of have a bit of a problem. I know it's a kid's film, but that's what happens in life, seriously. I don't get why people have a huge problem with this film in the aspects of, oh, it's showing girls on their period and stuff like that. Like, so? Isn't that what happens to girls? Come on. I mean, it wasn't the most comfortable subject to me, but it's literally in the film for like 30 seconds. I know the red panda is supposed to be a reference to it, but they show like pads maybe twice in the movie, and it's so easily just brush it off that you can just have a really good time with this film. And I don't get why so many people kind of hate this film, which maybe I get it, but I had a really good time with this film. It's not my favorite Pixar film, and I don't know if I'd necessarily say I love it anymore, but rather I'd say it is another good Pixar film. Now, Onward, I think, is actually pretty damn similar to Turning Red. It's just I thought Onward did the concept better. It's about family and them trying to kind of connect to their parents, with Turning Red more focused on a mother-daughter relationship, while Onward focuses more on a father, son, and brother relationship. I feel like Onward did the concept a little bit better. It's very different in that Turning Red is more about approval, while Onward is more about seeing their father one last time with a magic spell and then believing in magic, kind of. But my biggest positive with this film is the relationship between Ian and Barley. I think it's great how they fight like siblings are supposed to, but deep down they love each other very much. And it's kind of heartbreaking to see that Ian really thinks Barley is a failure, and it's like I don't think Barley wants to be that way, but the adventure itself is really cool. The world of all the mystical creatures is really cool. This film is a fun time, and we're getting into the really good Pixar films after this one, but Onward is a film that I think gets close to the top half of the list, but doesn't quite make it, and it's one of the last films that doesn't. I think we are getting towards the top half literally with the next film, though. So, this is the last film that I'd say is on the bottom half of my list. Still a really enjoyable time, but doesn't quite make it to the top half. Why do I see an angry mob outside of my house? Oh no! Coming in at number 12 is Toy Story 3. I pissed off the entire freaking world when I just said this. But the first one that I'd consider on my top half of my list, and the weakest one honestly, is Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3 is considered to be religious to some people with how much they love it. Well, I think you know this already, but I'm one of the people who thinks Toy Story 3 is an overrated movie. Is it still a great movie? Yes, it's a very great movie. The ending to the film, I'll honestly agree, is amazing. I think the characters are amazing. you really can't go wrong with the Toy Story characters. I honestly think the character relationships are better in this film than they are in, say, Toy Story 4. But the reason why I think Toy Story 4 is a better movie is because this film is depressing, honestly. It's more than half of this movie is just sad scene after sad scene after sad scene, and the film is dark and gritty and like you want to freaking see bad things happen a lot. So, and if this was like a war film or an action film or something like that, this would be great, but this is Toy Story. It's supposed to have some fun, and I don't have a lot of fun with this film. It's an incredibly made movie, and the characters we all know and love are great, but to me, this film is just a little too dark, I guess you could say. And it looks like we got another hot take. Coming in at my number 11 is Up. Up, in my opinion, is a great movie. It truly is. But the problem is, the first 10 minutes of the film are so phenomenally great that the rest of the film can't really compare to it. The rest of the film is like good, even great Pixar. It's a fun adventure and stuff like that in South America. I really enjoy the characters of Doug and Kevin. But the thing is, despite I think this is one of Pixar's shortest films, I'm not sure. It's probably one of their shorter films. This film to me drags on a little bit for some reason. I feel like this film drags on a little too long and they could have ended it maybe 5 minutes earlier. I don't know. But my main complaint is that it's just the first 20 minutes of this film is so great. The rest of the film really can't compare to it. It's a great movie and I love it, but it's not one of my absolute favorites. Alright, the top 10 is where I consider these films to be the Pixar classics. The films that I adore and are probably all in like my top 50 favorite films of all time. Let's start with number 10, which might be a shock, but I love this film. Really? Luca at number 10? Yeah, guys, it turns out that I love the living hell out of Luca. And that mainly honestly has to do with just how simple this film is. This might be the most simple Pixar film since the very first Toy Story. And I love it for that. All the characters are just so damn likable in this film. Luca, his mother, his father, Alberto, all of the characters in this film are super lovable. And the Italian landscape is just freaking gorgeous. I don't know if it's maybe to do with that I am part Italian in my blood, but I love this film so much, and I can't believe how underrated this film is. I love Luca, and I consider it a top 10 Pixar for sure. Coming in at number 9, we have Inside Out. Inside Out, in my opinion, is one of Pixar's more mature films. And unlike Soul, I love the living hell out of this film. It's just emotional enough to make you really emotional, and it's just mature enough to where kids can enjoy this film too. There's things they might not be able to especially get in this film, but they'll have fun with all the emotions and Riley being a kid kind of, and sort of like Luca, all the characters are likable in their ways in this film. Anger is my favorite character in this entire film. He's just freaking hysterical in this film. Sadness is proven that she can help out with Riley by occasionally making her sad, and that's healthy, and that's a really good message that it's okay to get sad sometimes. And her parents console her, and it's a very sweet and emotional scene. A movie about emotions made me emotional. Who would have thought? But yeah, Inside Out is a phenomenal film that I love a lot. Okay, now we get to, with one exception, films that are kind of from my childhood, admittedly. But I do think that was the best era for Pixar. And with the first one for that, coming in at number 8, we have Wall.e. Wall.e is truly an amazing film. And it doesn't say a heck of a lot. Like, the first half of this film doesn't even have a lot of talking in it. You see the emotion through the robots. Wall.e is a lonely robot until he finds Eve, whose mission is to find a plant. And then once he finds the plant, she shuts down and gets sent back to the Axiom. And it's kind of depressing to see where humanity has gone in this movie, with everyone basically being fat and living carefree lives, which is proof that makes me think that would be cool, but I wouldn't want that because I want to fulfill myself in life. I don't want to just sit down and eat food all the time and eat stuff in a cup, and I don't want to weigh like 1,000 pounds like the people in that movie do. So it gives me a message to fulfill yourself in life. Not only that, but to take care of the planet. And Wall.e and Eve's love, I'm sorry, Carl and Ellie, it's the best in Pixar. It's a beautiful relationship that I love. Wall.e has great memories for me too, but it's just an all-around amazing film. And I love it. This is the one exception for not really being a childhood film, as I saw this film when I was 17. Because I was 17 when this film came out, but I love the fuck out of Toy Story 4. More than most people do. I think Toy Story 4 has the fun of the first film, kind of. It feels so much damn fun. And yet it has emotional scenes with the ending where he leaves all the other toys to be a lost toy to be with Bo Peep. There's one reason I don't think this film is as good as Toy Story 1 or 2, and that's because of Bonnie. Bonnie freaking infuriates me in this film. But Toy Story 4, I think, is one of Pixar's most underrated films. I love the hell out of this film, and I always will. I don't care what anybody says. I like this film more than Toy Story 3. I just felt Toy Story 3 was kind of too overly depressing, while this had the balance of emotion and fun just right, and that's what I love about it. Toy Story 4 is my favorite film in the new era of Pixar, in my personal opinion. Toy Story 4 is the best newer Pixar film. The Incredibles. What an epic film. And you know what? The action in this film, while it's phenomenal and probably Pixar's all-time best, isn't my favorite part of the film. It's the bonding between the Parr family. You feel like this is a real family. While they have dysfunctional moments, they really love and care about each other. And I love it. I love all the members of this family. I love Bob, I love Helen, I love Violet, I love Dash, and I love Jack Jack. But do you want to know my favorite part of this film personally? It's Syndrome. Syndrome is an incredible villain. He idolized Mr. Incredible for years, but once he got in trouble from him, basically, by trying to help him save someone, he realized your idols aren't really your friends, and that's the day he became evil. It's a great twist, in my opinion. Now, I know a lot of people would consider this like top 3 Pixar. I can't quite go that far, but You know what? This is top 6 for me, and I love it, and it just misses the top 5. But what makes my top 5 just barely, I was very confused on if I thought this or The Incredibles was better. But coming in at my number 5 is Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo is one of the big childhood Pixar films for me. I pretty much have watched this film every year since it came out, and I was only 2 years old when this film came out. So, I've watched this film every single year since, and it may be a little bit nostalgic for me, but it's just got a great story, a great message about basically letting kids be a little more independent, and it is a little similar to Turning Red in that aspect, but I think this film, Turning Red, doesn't even touch Finding Nemo in quality. That film is good. This film, it's a 10 out of 10 movie for me. I love the hell out of this film. All the characters are great and memorable. The adventure itself is probably my favorite Pixar adventure of them going to find Nemo. And that's why I love the living hell out of Finding Nemo, and it makes my top 5. At my number 4, we have Toy Story 2. Toy Story 2, in my opinion, is probably the most nostalgic Pixar film of all time for me. I remember everything about this film, from Al stealing Woody to all the characters basically going to save him on this pretty epic adventure for little toys. The new characters like Jessie, Bullseye, and Stinky Pete are awesome. Stinky Pete, I actually feel, is a great villain and might be my favorite Pixar villain, period. Zurg, as little screen time as he had, is a great villain. I like this film a little teensy weensy bit less than I did even a couple of years ago, when I consider this my all-time favorite Pixar film. And that's because there's just films as I've grown up I like a little more. But that doesn't make up for the fact that Toy Story 2 is an incredible film, and it's a top 4 for me. Here's the most drastic change on my entire list. Coming in at my number 3, my third favorite Pixar film of all time is Ratatouille. The biggest change on my entire list. My past 2 or 3 rewatches of this film, I love the fuck out of this film. It's just got such a great message of following your dreams, and all the characters are likable, and the look of France in this film is just breathtaking. This film is also hilarious, especially the scene with the guy who killed a man with his thumb. That's hilarious. Seeing Remy basically be a puppet master to Linguini is hilarious. And that ending is Pixar's all-time best ending. It's incredible. Oh my god. And again, just like The Incredibles, this is one of Pixar's best musical scores of all time. You know. Ratatouille is a film I appreciate more as an adult. I liked this film as a kid, but I adore this film as an adult, and I see it as Pixar's third best film. Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. has been all over the place for years for me. But you know what I realized? This film has always had a special place in my heart. And upon my most recent rewatch, I realized this is my second favorite Pixar film. The duo between Mike and Sully is just beautiful. And the relationship between Boo and Sully is adorable, and it's heartbreaking when he has to leave at the end. It's honestly, in my opinion, the most emotional scene in Pixar's history. Yeah, even more than the scene in Up. I think this film is just... It's hilarious. It has a phenomenal villain. It has all great characters. A lot of great twists. It's just a classic. I love Monsters, Inc. It's one of my big childhood movies, up there with Finding Nemo and the #1 spot. But I just can't quite say this film is #1. This film is a top 10 favorite of all time for me. But #1 is a top 5 of all time for me. And coming in at #1 is the film that started it all, Toy Story. The original Toy Story is my #1 favorite Pixar film of all time. We all know the story. Andy gets a Buzz Lightyear for his birthday, Woody's jealous, and then they go on an adventure and taken by Sid, and then they gotta get back to Andy. You know the story. Characters, classic. Humor, the best. The emotion, it's not Pixar's most emotional film, but that's okay because it tugs at your heartstrings just enough to where it's a classic film. It honestly, in a way, feels the most, despite it being the first film, it kind of feels the most unique in feeling, I guess you could say. Like, I don't know. This film feels older than most of Pixar films. Probably because, admittedly, it does have the weakest animation out of all of the films, but it's still incredible animation for its time, and it has to do with timing, but this film is just classic and is the first Pixar film I ever saw. I can't gush about this film enough. Toy Story is a phenomenal film, and that's why it's my #1 favorite Pixar film of all time. So that's about it, guys. For the rest of this week, I plan to have a plush video out that I already pre-filmed finally. And I'm planning on getting a tier list out tonight. I'm going to try to do one last video besides that for this week, but I can't guarantee it. So if not, enjoy this video, and I hope you did. This is my Pixar film ranking, and it has changed a lot from my Pixar tier list. And that's about it, guys. Gaming Do here. See you later. Bye.